We provoke thought, and for that, we do not apologize.
And now, your host, the voice of We Provoke Thought, and for that, we do not apologize.
Good day, I am the voice of We Provoke Thought. We Provoke Thought is an organization and show that is the platform for those who have an opinion, idea, or educated information to share to the world, an outlet to voice your feelings and facts. Today's show is 50 Shades of Brown, where I have a special guest, an Egyptian Sudanese-American author of the 2006 Diary of a Lost Girl and the sexy part of the Bible, the poet of the Nile River Woman, a writer, model, mother, the infamous, the famous Kola Boof. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Now, the name of the show is called 50 Shades of Brown, and we're going to be talking about colorism. And through following you, I found that you had a lot of experience as well as a lot of knowledge from abroad that can bring an element to this show that can be renowned. And I would like to just basically give you the floor and let you begin wherever you want to begin. But for those that are unaware what colorism is, if we look at the definition of colorism, we're looking at a discrimination based on skin color. Now, you find colorism in many different races out there, but basically it's a form of prejudice or discrimination that has a classification and social impact. But we're going to talk about the impact on how colorism has affected Kola Boof as well as other African Americans as well as Africans all abroad. And from there, I would just like to say to you, what is your understanding of colorism?
Well, colorism started for me when I was born. My Egyptian father, Harith bin Farouk, married my charcoal-skinned Oromo mother, and his Egyptian family disowned him for that. The reason my father married my charcoal mother really purchased her, actually. He purchased her from her clan and, took her in marriage. But the reason he did that is that he wanted to restore black blood to the Kobalkek family line. And as my Egyptian grandmother explained to me, they had spent 120 years breeding the black out of the Kobalkek family. So after 120 years of, an Arab-Turkish family breeding all the black out, here comes my Arab father, trying to marry this really black woman to bring the black back into the family. And so he was disowned. He lived in Sudan instead of Egypt. And when my father, he fought against slavery and genocide in my country, Sudan, and the government had him and my mother assassinated when I was 6 years old. So at 6, when my parents were assassinated, I was sent to my Egyptian grandmother, and she put me up for adoption because of my dark skin coloring. She said that this woman cannot fit, in a Arab family. She looked too much like us, so they couldn't pass me as the Dinka daughter, because they're like, her face looks just like us, but she's very dark-skinned, and so I was put up for it. Well, it's illegal in Egypt. Adoption is illegal, so she went to the mullahs and got permission, put me for adoption, and I was given to UNICEF, which was the first time I ever saw a white person in person, was when I saw Owen McCandless, a white Irishman who took over my life. He basically acted as my father for the next 2 years. And that was my beginning journey from age 6 with colorism, and the whole white supremacist ideal that is worldwide, really, that light skin should be privileged and put first, and that the blacker you are, the further to the bottom you belong, especially females. Males have it a little easier with colorism because dark skin is seen as masculinity. So, you know, a male can be seen as masculine being dark, but a black woman who is extremely dark, like my mother was, is just seen as nothing.
So I guess that would kind of answer my next question, which would be like, you know, the origin of colorism. It's a little deeper than just slavery itself, American slavery, then I would gather.
Okay, say that again. You're saying American slavery, because I think colorism started much longer before that. I mean, colorism is a part of a white supremacy. Yeah, it's part of white supremacy that has been going on in different regions of the world. I mean, the Arabs enslaved us first. They enslaved Africa for 500 years before the white people came in and took West Africa. So they had already pretty much implemented a colorist system. And, you know, it's a natural thing that occurs once you start owning these black people and sleeping with them. You have to now create a system to deal with, you know, the wild, untamed ones, the ones that are your children with them. If you think about it like that, because think of it in reverse. If we went and captured white people and enslaved them, we would have created the same system where the darkest white would be favored and the whiter white, the purest one, would be the one that we want to destroy.
All right, so classification impact for sure then. So which would you think is worse, colorism or racism? Or do you see a difference in the two?
I think that colorism is the root activator in racism. Colorism is, for instance, let's go back to the slave trade, this time in West Africa. The Berbers are indigenous Africans who many of them are so light-skinned that they look white. And they were not ever enslaved by these white people who came to get these West Africans. The West African kings sold a lot of the black people. Initially, they sold several, but then the white people infiltrated and took over these kingdoms and pretty much, started to enslave the people by capturing them. And the Berbers were helping to capture black people and sell them, at that point later. The Berbers, and they were accepted because they lacked the color. They lacked the dark skin. They lacked that coloring, even though they were African people who are indigenous to Africa. By being so incredibly light and not black-looking, they were able to transcend it. So, racism, so much of it is based on color. And it's the reason I call it the root activator, because if you can look almost white, if you can look like Mariah Carey or Jennifer Beals, then white people will have a different type of racism towards you. It's much easier. You know what I mean? Because you look so much like them until they can somewhat more see you as them. And so the color is really the thing that drives the racism, the amount of color. The darker you are, the more fearful they become of you.
And why is that? I mean, I know no one really has the definite answer, the definitive answer on that.
I think it's human nature. I think it's human nature because we are animals. Human beings are animals, and we have territory. We want our children to get the best. We want our children to feed the best, to do this and that. And whites, unlike us, they were the first race of people who had a predator, who was the Neanderthals. An equal predator. We were the first humans. So when we started, we were the only humans to deal with. We didn't have to go to war or have to, strategize and manipulate to control the land against another group of human-like, thinkers. We didn't go through that. the first people that went through that were the whites, because they were the last race. They've only been here 6,000 years. They were the final race of humans. So they had to manipulate to control Europe by fighting with this other whole group of race of very close like human people, Neanderthals. And so once they wiped out the Neanderthals, if you notice, the beginning of their reign of terror on the earth was after they wiped out the Neanderthals. Now they didn't have a foe. They didn't have an opponent. And so they sailed looking, you know, the Vikings and all these different white gangs that went out looking to pillage and rape and kill and destroy people. And so, you know, the world was already built on slavery. We Africans have been enslaving each other from the beginning of time. The difference is that with African slavery, for one thing, it rarely went beyond 7 years. There was like a cutoff rule that a person can only be enslaved for 7 years. And also, many, let's say, African women that were slaves of Africans went on to marry into their master's family, often marrying their master. You see what I'm saying? And so it was a different thing because you could actually become, many African queens were slave dancers. They were dancing girls when they were like 12 and 13. They were dancing girls, slaves, and became favorites of the king and then became a queen. So, you know, white slavery in America is not like that. You can't go from being, you know, a field slave to the queen of the state or the country or whatever.
Right.
And so that was the difference. And the same with the men in Africa. And the men were even actually had it a little easier with slavery in Africa because so many tribes will not enslave males. It was in Africa seen as mostly a female thing. So it was a different kind of slavery, but we had already had that, so our mind was already set to it. You see what I'm saying? That a lot of these people who sold, a lot of these Africans who sold blacks to the whites just assumed that, well, they're only going to be a slave for 7 years. They're going to go to this other country and be able to join the family. And, you know, their mind was okay, they're going to go over there and conquer it, basically, like the Moors. We'll sell you as a slave today, but down the road, you're going to become... And so, you know, that is the whole thing of it, is that I really believe that the color in that type of slavery, because, you know, we also have, like, Indian slavery. If we go way back to Rome and Greece and that slavery, and all races were slaves. So with the whites, they picked color as a way to, like, it was a good way, really, to, like, differentiate between who is who. You know what I mean? Because with the black, you don't have to wonder who that is. You know immediately slaves.
We made it too easy for them, I guess. Then, so then I guess that would mean that, because my next question was going to be is, are women and men equal victims of colorism? But I guess in this case, from your understanding, that it's a little unlevel,
well,
there,
the black men
there.
The black men benefit from dark skin being seen as masculine.
Right.
And so because they see that as sexually attractive, it's a double-edged sword for black men, because on the one hand, it's threatening. It's like, he's going to have a bigger penis. This is their mind. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying this is how the whites see it, is that
there's no need to apologize on this show. You speak how you feel.
He's going to be seen that way. And I just don't want people to think I personally believe this stuff. I'm just saying this is how they see us.
Right.
And so for black men, even though, you know, but then at the same time, when it comes to the dating pool and this and that, black men will be more acceptable and welcome. With black women, they are almost, and I'm talking authentic black women. I'm not talking kind of mixed, light brown, nut brown. I'm talking about the authentic, unmixed, pure-looking African black woman. Is invisible. I mean, literally invisible, not celebrated by black people, not held up as a beauty image. Ironically, when they are held up, sort of like Alec Webb. or Lupita Nyong'o, it's really white people holding them up. White people pick them and put them up there. It's not the black community. So, that is the really hard, terrible truth, is that we are a race of people who essentially is against its own mother. And black people don't think of it that way. They get really defensive and in denial when you put it that way, but it's really the truth, is that our mother was not Lena Horne. If you are from the black race, the first woman you came from was charcoal black. For centuries, all of those women were the blackest black women, and now you don't even know any. Most black people in America live in homes where they don't even know a woman who looks like Lupita or like They don't know authentic black women anymore. And so that right there is the proof of my point of what I'm saying, is that our own, and I put it on us, not white people, because this is something that is so ingrained in us to go for lightness, to privilege lightness, to see femininity as light skin, that we have become extremely abusive to those type of people in our community, those women and men who love those women. Men who try to defend those women are then become demonized by black men as well. Our community tries to avoid those women, which is our mother root, because, see, we want to become biracial. And then if you notice, once we become biracial, look at Halle Berry, look at Tiger Woods, once we become biracial, we get pure white children. That's the next step, is that we breed to our children are purely white.
So with your experience, do you believe that men or women commit colorism more, or which would you
men
say?
do it. Men do it much more because they're less sensitive to it and they're not the victim of it, and they also deny it exists. And men are much, much more. We could go down the list of music videos and everything where black men not only did they take pride in trying to put a white face on black women, on trying to put in their mind, no beautiful black woman exists who can represent, no matter how gorgeous she is, it's usually a white man who will discover someone like Iman and put her out there. It's usually a white man who will take Naomi Campbell and put her, literally all those women are discovered and peddled by white men.
And
you know what I'm saying? And it's really sad.
I know, and it's funny because with listening to what you're saying there, like I have some friends, and their beliefs on colorism and and racism in itself, they believe that the one of the major fears from the white community is that their race in itself will be erased, as the more blacks that intermingle and form relationships with white women or white men with black women, that because black is the dominant, when they have their offsprings, and eventually their offsprings will no longer look white, and so on and so forth. But here, just listening to how you're explaining things,
I so disagree. I've heard that whole analogy, but look at O.J. Simpson's children. They look pure white. They don't look anything like a black person. Look at Jermaine Jackson's son. His son looks like he stole that boy from Argentina. There is nothing about that boy that looks... But this is what black people have claimed. I do know, I hear it all the time, but you know what they're really destroying is the black race. They're not hurting white people because white people don't accept mulattoes. For one thing, whites don't accept those mixed people as white.
Gotcha.
Number two, Jews. Let's take Jews are the smallest population people, and yet they control how much. They control unlimited stuff.
You're right.
You don't have to have, this is the black stupidity that I talk about. We think that, having 70 million people when South Africa is ruled by like 10 white people. You know what I'm saying? Or look at Sudan. Sudan, all black nation, where the Arabs completely dominated us.
Right.
And so it's not, that isn't going to help, thinking that we're just going to bastardize everybody until there's so many mixed people, because those mixed people also will not be able to fully see themselves as black, no matter what you think, no matter what
neither
black
side will be able to identify.
Right, and no matter what black Americans think, a person who has mixed blood, who has white features and freckles and, you know, blonde tint and all this stuff, are going to become intensely curious about that side of their racial. They know it's not coming from Africa. And so no matter how you try to force them to identify only with blackness, ultimately it's impossible for them to do that. They have to see the other side, and they can never ride completely in two boats at once. Then with Africans, we're even worse, as far as we will never see them as African black people. They will always be half caste.
Got you. And how does that impact, say, are they ostracized? You know, how, you know, because I know in other races, you know, they're ostracized a lot of times. I mean, their names for them, whether it be mulatto, the Hispanics, negritos, you know. So how is it in Africa when you do have that mixed race, if you will?
Well, they don't consider themselves black. It's a different setup in Africa. We don't have the one-drop rule at all. We rejected that. We tried to implement that, but nowhere in Africa did they embrace that. It's just no place in Africa where you will, where you will find that at all.
Gotcha.
And mixed people in Africa don't go through any of this because they don't want to be considered black. They are mixed. They, you know, want to know. They want you to know they are both Dutch and Botswana. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
They are both.
Gotcha.
They are both races, and so there in Africa there are half caste people, but then we have African people who are black, who are considered fully African, who are like yellow, like the yam yam. We call it yam yam. People who are a black person who is very, very light-skinned, but they are full black, full African. And those are the yam-yam. And they look different from biracial, though. They don't have anything looking white, anything. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like you have
definitely.
Red Fox. Do you know the Sanford and Son?
Right.
Red Fox. That's an example of a yam-yam back home.
Wow.
Now, I know in reality he's mixed with white and all that from being in America.
Right, but
if you find somebody like that in the Congo, that's a yam-yam. That's a person who is, they consider them all African because there's nothing, they don't look like or, you know, people like that.
Right. So, and with your experience traveling abroad, and so, what other races are affected by colorism that you may know of?
Well, we know Indians. We know all people. Koreans, Thai, everybody in the world who is not white is under the effect of colorism. It's not as dramatic in some places as it is with black people, but it's definitely there with Latinos. They have the same exact dichotomy with color.
Right. And now, is colorism dealt? I think we touched on it a lot, but do you feel strongly that it's dealt totally different from how it is here in America? Because from what it sounds like, there's a big here in America, it's a classification impact, whereas it affects not only socially but class-wise. Whereas in Africa, you just like you said, there's no one-drop rule there. It's like you are or you aren't. And is it blatant or subtle? You are, and the people there benefit who are biracial and look light skin and white because they're, you know, literally considered white. You know, a person who is biracial in America will go there and be called Oyibo in Nigeria, and Oyibo means white. Or in my country, they will be called Anjurchol. I forgot what the one is for the light-skinned people, but it's Jur something. Because, see, I'm half Arab, so that means I'm Anjurchol, which means I'm a bastard who is black. It means you came out black, but you're still a bastard. You're still mixed. Right, because it's funny you should say that because I see.
But they acknowledge that you're black. Do you see what I'm saying?
Got you. Because with me on Twitter, I'll see that. I actually saw that Yibo being tossed around a lot, especially with a lot of my connections or shall I say the followers from out of the UK that are African or have African descent or what have you. You'll see that terminology being tossed around a lot. So it's good to know what that means now. Like I just recently, and I believe it was from a post that you had put out there on Twitter where the word Abid was a racial term by the Arabs,
right.
if I'm not. Yeah. So
well, right. That's what Arabs call blacks, which means slaves.
I tell you, white supremacy, boy, it's a vicious system that. So, which leads me to my next question. With all of this being said, what do you believe the solution is to this, or is there a solution to it?
Well, the solution is for black people to reject the mindset, to embrace the blackest as the standard. That's the solution, is to make blackness the standard of blackness, which is just common sense.
Right.
The blackest person should be our standard of beauty and everything, of what we are trying to be, should be the blackest.
Yes.
That's what it was before white people took over us. Let's go back for a minute to the days when Africans put their children in the sun, their newborns in the sun to get blacker. See, we forget that that was our thing, was that we wanted to be more and more of ourselves. And that has totally been destroyed. And black people, especially where I live in America, and I'm speaking because I live in America, I'm surrounded by black Americans. Black Americans adopted me and raised me. So I'm speaking from that vantage point.
Right.
Black Americans totally embrace the one-drop rule and the idea that white and light is better. So white supremacy can never end because they themselves worship. That is their church. That is their religion. Is that the lighter the baby is, the better. The lighter the woman in the movie is, the better. Their whole thing. They give tokenism to dark skin and blackness, intellectually, because they know what white supremacy is, and that, okay, we should. But there is no movement among people in America that are black to actually, or in England where I also lived. Same thing over in England. I would say it's even worse in England. But the thing is that there is no movement with black people in America or England to make blackness the standard of blackness. They cannot bring themselves, they're so white supremacists that they cannot bring themselves to do that. And because they can't, then it's doomed. We are eventually going to be doomed. There's no way around it. As long as that is the light for us, then that is where we're on. And I say for us because not only do I live in America, but I deliberately had my children by a black man, a dark black man, because I would not have children unless they were black. Right. And so my sons are basically black American boys who are dark-skinned, who will also be part of this society, even though my sons have been raised to reject it and to go against this whole belief system. Nothing they do, there are only 2 boys. They can't overcome what 50 million blacks will, choose.
And it's hard because it's perpetuated in so many different ways and avenues and parts of our lives that, it's almost, it's almost to say like white supremacy hides underneath every rock, behind every corner. You draw your curtains and boom, white supremacy right there waiting for you. It's like, because I remember.
It's ingrained in everything.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up, your parents would tell you, don't stand in that sun too long, you get too black. What is too black? So I definitely understand. I really thank you for all of this information. Now, before we come to a close here, speaking to you earlier, you said you had a book And I want you to put that out there for the audience to hear about that touches upon colorism. And I believe that was the sexy part of the Bible.
Yeah, my last novel, The Sexy Part of the Bible, is a story about a black woman who finds out she's a clone. And so she wants to know about the woman she was cloned from. And so she finds out that woman was an activist against skin bleaching in Africa, and the woman was stomped to death by the Africans. The other Africans stomped this African woman to death because they wanted their Michael Jackson skin bleaching pills. You know, they wanted their skin cream and all of this. And the book is called The Sexy Part of the Bible because as she's researching to find out who she is through this activist, she discovers that in the 1600s, when white explorers would come to West Africa, at first, the ship hands were wanting to marry the African women there as wives. And the Church of England came, sent this preacher down to give this big speech about why you must never marry these women. And basically in the speech, he said that the white woman is the virtue in the Bible. Her hand is fair. But the black man's mother is the sex in the Bible. Her hand is wicked. And basically to use these women for sex and throw them back into the jungle, rape them and throw them back into the jungle. And so white men started calling black West African women the sexy part of the Bible. And that was a slang term in the 1600s, early 1700s. It was a slang term used by these men who raped, they had little clubs almost where, I had her, and are you going to rape her next kind of thing. And so that's what they referred to them as, was the sexy part of the Bible. So it's very sad. This shows you where our beginning of being dehumanized and taught.
And where can people find this book? On Amazon or?
On Amazon and in your bookstores. If you go to Barnes & Noble, they should have it. If they don't, ask them to order it, and they can order it right away. It's in the system. And it's in your local libraries as well. So it's in about 5,000 American libraries. So it's not a hard book to find, the second part of the Bible. And it won so many awards, and it's been so praised, and I'm just really proud of that book.
Well, I'm definitely going to pick one up myself. And also, I don't want to leave out another big seller of yours, your 2006 Diary of a Lost Girl.
That's my life story.
Right, so I want people to understand, and they can pick that up from Amazon as well, correct?
That's right.
All right, great. Well, Kola Boof, I really appreciate you and allowing We Provoke Thought to be the platform for you to express yourself and your thoughts and views on colorism. But before I let you go, I always like to ask this last question for all of my guests, and that is a real simple question, or maybe not. If you had the power, what would you do with it?
What would I do with what?
With the power. If you had the power to do anything, shoot the...
God, you all would be in so much trouble. If I had the power of the world, oh my God. Well, no, I would make it a world of love. I would just make everyone believe... And everyone would believe...
You're being nice.
No, this is the truth, because I would make it where everyone saw everything exactly as I do. So you see the problem with humanity, because that's how we are. We want everybody to be like us, and I'm no different.
Right.
If I had that kind of power, everyone would believe what Kola believes, and and so it would be a wonderful world of love, because
that's right. But you still have your own lane to work, right? Your own driving lane. No matter where you go, it'd be the Kola lane, right? No HOV lane, Kola lane. No one gets in your way.
To be honest, I would hate to be in that position, but if I was in it, that is what I would do. Is just make everyone think like Kola.
Hey, I love the honesty, and that's what's up. Well, I appreciate you, as we always say. This is thought. For that, I'm going to say goodbye to you on the other end. Hold the line.
Okay, thank you so much, and it was just an honor to talk to you.
This call has been recorded.